Well, good afternoon, Anne. It's
Good
so nice to
afternoon.
meet you in person finally. We had received these beautiful photos that you had mailed the Institute a few months ago. And so it's um, definitely a opportunity that I've been looking forward to speak with you live about these photos. So if we can jump right in, if you will tell us a little bit about how you started meeting B.K.S. Iyengar. What was your what was your history?
Well, the early teachers who were exposed to his teaching back in the 70s, mostly led by Rama Vernon. I don't know if you're familiar with her, but yeah, so
Yes.
she did a lot to get yoga going in this country, really, for that matter. And Judith Lassiter and Felicity Hall and Ramanand Patel, and there were others who I can't remember right now, but they began to teach in a warehouse in San Francisco. And I was a student in another area studying, and I heard about this and I got involved. And it was really a fun time because uh, there were no props. The props we used were our books, and we brought our own belts and all that kind of stuff. And we would study and practice for hours every day, month after month, year after year. It was a very, the early stages of something where you're just exploring. And the Institute for Yoga Teacher Education was part of Holistic Life University back in those days that had 4 tracks, and yoga was one of them. Okay, so that's how that all started, and it was a base for his teachings. And after it was underway, and I'm not going to remember linear time, but I and another man who was in the program, we offered to help run it. So we ran it and ran the programs and organized for a while. And then in the I think it was maybe 1977, he came to the West Coast, and I think Rama probably brought him. And he stayed with her in her house, and some of those photographs are of his staying in her house. She had a beautiful home in the Berkeley Hills where she hosted many of the back then other yoga teachers that came from India. So he came, and those of us who were studying in his style of yoga met with him, and I have a very vivid memory, excuse me, of stepping into the studio. There was a large studio in Tilden Park in Berkeley, which hosted week-long teachings for teachers only. And I remember stepping into this room, and I didn't know what he looked like. I'd never seen a picture of him, and there was a small, looked like a kind of paunchy Indian man over in a corner, and it was not what I had in mind, so I kind of ignored him. And then the time came for class to start, and he stood up, and I still remember this so vividly. He just kept growing and growing and growing. He transformed as he moved from this kind of, you know, in the corner, small Indian man with kind of a belly. And all of a sudden he stood up, and we all stood at attention. He didn't have to say anything. And that was the beginning of our week long with him. So these pictures are from that week long. And at the end of it, a group of about 25 of us went out to Yosemite with him for the weekend. And we lived in some of the yurts and camping, and we fed him. And I remember he got up at 3 a.m. to do 5 hours of practice before any of us got up. And then we did some hiking. We hiked up to the waterfalls, and that's when he climbed over some of the barriers and began doing his inverted poses and inviting us to join him and that kind of thing. And what I do remember, I don't remember the content at all, but he and I walked together just the two of us, from the valley floor up to the first falls, which is Vernal Falls, about 300 feet in elevation. And it was I just remember the feeling of very friendly and low key, informal chit chatting with him. I don't remember what it was about, but he learned my name during that walk. And when we got up to the falls and he began to do his handstands and headstands and whatever else he was doing on the edge of the falls, he invited me to come over the barrier and do something with him. And I remember thinking at the time, I think I'll just place my life in the hands of the master once. That was the thought. So he stood between me and the edge of the falls, and I did headstand, and I have slides that I came across of that, which I'll send to you, so you can make prints from them if you want. And
That
I
would be
remember
great.
I just did it, and then when I went back and climbed back over the barrier, I remember my heart just it was really scary. Yeah. Anyway, so that's some of the memory, and I don't know if he came back to the West Coast, but that was his first visit. And it was early days, so everything was exciting and not well formed. Everything was experimental, experiential. We just kind of went with the flow. And Rama, who was my main teacher, was an extraordinary human being, full of adventure and willing to take risks, and a wonderful teacher. Uh, anyway, I won't go off on her, but she's the one that started a lot of the things that are now, including the Yoga Journal and California Yoga Teachers Association, and so to have containers for the yoga that she wanted to bring.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that sounds like an incredible time to have been around, B.K.S. Iyengar. Um,
He was in his 50s, so I think he was in his prime. I mean, obviously he went on for another 4 decades, but he was young and vigorous and exciting, and we were also. I mean, I was probably in my mid-30s back then. Yeah,
well, I would love to bring up those photos that you had
sure.
sent us, and perhaps you can jump in and just comment about each one as we go through them.
I'll see what I can do. Yeah.
All right, let me see if I can bring them up. All right, so here's
Yeah.
the first photo. You can comment on this one.
Yeah, well, you're really challenging my memory, Maggie. But this is what I do recall. I remember this woman who was one of the students who's got his head in her hands.
Mhm.
Uh, he, he taught in so many different ways. And one of the ways he taught was to do the pose and then ask us to participate in some way. So I can't tell you what he asked her, but I do remember that he had her hold his head in her hands so that she had something for her to learn
Mm,
as a teacher in training.
yeah,
And
yeah.
you can see the people in the background. We were all, of course, just riveted
Mhm.
because if you, which you probably know, if your attention strayed, he would notice it, and he would say something, or he'd hit you over the head, or yell at you, or whatever. And we wanted to pay attention, but our habit was to be distracted. But you can see in the background,
Yeah,
obviously, yeah.
very
So
nice.
that is part of the week-long teacher training.
Wonderful. Well, here's the second one of him in Uttanasan. And this
Oh,
looks to be in somebody's home, it looks like.
that's going to be Rama's home, I think. Once I see it, I'll know
Right.
for sure. But
Yeah.
and I did not take any of these pictures, and I don't remember how I got any of them. I just have kept them and they've traveled with me. Um,
All right.
oh, there we go, Nasa. Yeah, that's going to be in Rama's home.
Okay.
And not in the studio. That's probably somewhere in her living room. I
Yeah.
do
It
not
looks
know
like
who took it. I
it.
don't remember. It must have been during that visit
Mhm.
sometime. There's not much I can tell you.
No worries.
Uh,
We'll skip to
We
the
can,
next
we
photo.
can certainly see quite a display of that pose.
Here's a new photo. Can you see? Is it very similar to the first one? Looks like to be in Sarvangasan and the students gathering around to really observe.
So that's Judith Lassiter
Hmm.
with the braid
Uh-huh.
closest to him. You can see how, gosh, we were all very young then.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it would have been the same time, right, as the
Hmm.
prior photo of the woman
Yeah.
holding his head. I think what strikes me is what I can only imagine is the transference of teaching. I mean, look at Judith looking at him,
Hmm.
and I can I can't even imagine what's going on in her, but obviously
Hmm.
very, very close attention. And he's
Yeah.
teaching.
Hmm.
He's teaching. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's
It's
probably
a
moving some hair somewhere on his chest and giving us a whole teaching on what that means about,
right.
that was what
Yeah.
he did.
Yeah. It's a very sweet photo. These two.
Yeah.
Here's one of him in Natarajasana. I don't know if you can see it.
I can't see it yet, Maggie. Yeah.
Okay, so it looks like I have to hop out, hop back in.
Yeah, that's good.
Let's try that again. Share screen. Okay.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's pretty dramatic, isn't it?
Yes, it's a beautiful photo. Like, yeah, it's definitely one for the rest of us to strive for.
Quite inspiring, isn't it? Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. So, again, what strikes me is that it's so much life in every cell of his body. And when he was at rest and not doing his poses, everything just goes soft
Hmm.
and at deep rest. Yeah, and here he is full of vigor. Look at that standing leg.
So sturdy.
So straight, so strong, so
Yeah,
open. Yeah, wonderful for teaching.
absolutely.
So I imagine he may have done some demonstration at Rama's house and somebody took pictures and, oh yeah, oh my goodness. Well, there we, I love these pictures. Look at that. So there he is. He's standing in headstand. Now
Hmm.
we're looking, I don't know if you've been to Yosemite,
Hmm.
but yeah, so this is Vernal Falls. This is right on the edge.
Right.
I mean, you're just a foot away from a 300-foot fall. And one of his students in the top photo,
Hmm.
obviously it's a man, I don't know who
Hmm.
it is, but somebody crawled over the barrier, which you can see on the right-hand part of the picture, and did a headstand with him holding the feet.
Yeah.
And then these two on the right are him teaching. You can just uh,
Yeah.
imagine that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the other one is him on his own. Uh, eventually the ranger came and stopped him from doing it. Yeah.
uh, yeah, it's definitely a little bit hair raising there, right in the corner.
Well, and I remember, but I don't have pictures of him doing handstand
Oh my goodness.
and Pinchamayurasana, right? And yeah, yeah, Shirshasana. Yeah, these are really wonderful records of.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
mean, he was, a devotee of Hanuman, wasn't he? Oh, there he is
Mhm.
teaching. Yeah. So again, these are just candid snapshots of him in the process of teaching the teacher training group that was there. And
Mhm.
you can see the people in the background attentive. I don't remember any of these people.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't tell you. But you know the Moyers, Donald Moyer?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So
Know of them.
pardon me?
Know of them.
Oh, okay. So he was part of the training that I was in. Okay, because these were the very beginning days of when
Yeah.
his teachings by way of Rama were
Mm-hmm.
coming to the West Coast. Yeah. So they may have been somewhere in that group. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah, I would imagine. All right, here's
They
another
they might
one.
have they might have a lot to share with you, actually. Oh, look, he's getting ready to do headstand, isn't he?
Yeah.
All that teaching of how to place the hands and every movement. I mean, looking at these with you is really brings back memories. I remember him giving a teaching on the way that the nails grew. Oh,
Mm.
there's Judith in the bottom right-hand corner
With the
with her
pigtail.
braids
Yeah.
looking
So young.
so young. And so she just gotten out of PT school.
Mm.
So she offered the first physical therapy class in the yoga training program. She offered physiology and she offered anatomy
Mm-hmm.
and physiology. Yeah. So there he is doing, I mean, we can only imagine what he's saying, but you don't
Yeah.
want to take your eyes off him. Mhm.
All right. So we have one more photo.
Oh, okay.
This last one is more a reflective photo of him. Like,
Oh, look at that lovely moment somebody caught
mm-hmm.
uh, of a moment of reflection, maybe, or yeah, these are wonderful. So
Yeah.
I'm so glad you've got them.
Oh no. Well, thank you for sharing them.
Use, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's in a way speaks for itself. It
Yeah.
was all part of that same time, Maggie, but I can't tell you much more about.
No worries. So this must be also from the 70s.
This is all from the 70s. I do believe it was 1977 that he came. I think I came across that date somewhere. Um, because not too long after that, I moved out of the area to the mountains, and my intense yoga days came to a close.
Mm,
Yeah. I mean, I did some practice and workshops, but it was nothing like those first 6 years when,
yeah. Well, sounds like to be a lovely 6 years.
well, like anything that's at the very beginning, it was so exciting and experimental and experiential and unformed and yeah, yeah,
Wonderful. Well, I want to thank you again for sending those to the Institute and making time to meet with me
of course.
today and just talking about it and just sharing your history from 40 years ago.
You're
I
very
wish you
welcome.
well and I'll keep in touch.
Very good. Yes. And if you want, I will send you these slides
Yeah, that will be
because
wonderful.
these will be more of the same from the same. Gosh, I must have taken them because those are my slides. But in any event, you're of course just keep them and use them in any way you want. This will
Yeah,
be
that sounds
useful. Yeah.